So Addison County Riverwatch Collaborative is a group of volunteers, and what we do is we go in teams to specified sites on these 6 rivers. From April to September, we monitor once per month. We have about 30 volunteers and we have about 30 sites on these 6 rivers, which represent 6 watersheds that flow into them. Once we get those samples and we handle those samples very carefully, we send them to the state of Vermont's Agricultural and Environmental Lab for processing. So what we're doing here today is we're making an instructional video so that everyone knows our uniform protocols for doing this the best we can. We pride ourselves on reliable sampling. Sometimes we make mistakes, and so what we do is we have redundant systems so that the effect of human error is minimized as much as possible. And so what we're trying to do today is have a video that explains everything that we do step by step so that there's real clarity about how to go about sampling Addison County's rivers. So now I'm delighted to introduce Kristen Underwood. She's our Quality Assurance Officer, and she will illustrate with some volunteers the sampling methods that we use.
To ensure that data collected are of the highest quality, there are specific procedures that must be followed in the field. Today we have Sally, Jane, and Bjorn to demonstrate some of our more common sampling procedures. So many of our volunteers use a pole with a collection bottle on the end as a way to reach our sample sites. It's convenient during the high flow times of the year when water is rushing quickly by. It's also helpful in the low flow times of the year to reach the deepest part of the channel, or what we call the thalweg. Our samplers here are collecting a sample for turbidity. It's important to rinse the collection bottle on the end of the pole prior to sample collection. And it's important to be aware of when the bottom sediment in the river is disturbed. We want to avoid collecting that disturbed water. Our samplers are now triple rinsing the square Nalgene bottle that's used to collect a turbidity sample. The Nalgene bottle for turbidity is filled, leaving just a small amount of headspace, and the threaded cap is secured tightly to the bottle. The next sample they'll be collecting is for E. coli, and this is a 100 ml plastic bottle that's provided by the Vermont Agricultural and Environmental Laboratory with a seal on the lid. It's important not to break that seal until you get to the sample site, and once you do and remove the lid of the bottle, it's very important not to touch the underside of the lid or the rim of the bottle, as that would contaminate the sample with bacteria that we all have on the outsides of our skin. The bottle is filled to the raised 100 milliliter line on the bottle, and the cap is placed on top of the bottle. The E. coli bottle does not have a requirement for triple rinsing prior to filling. Next, the samplers are collecting a sample for total phosphorus. They're noting the black horizontal line marked on the outside of the bottle, which denotes the maximum fill line for that bottle. Sometimes we get a little extra. Use a flick of the wrist to empty the bottle ever so slightly so that the meniscus of the water line meets exactly the black line marked on the outside of the bottle. It's capped and then placed in the sample bag for return to the cooler. Bjorn will demonstrate another sample collection method. This is without using the pole, where you actually enter the river and go to the deepest part of the channel. You want to be careful not to disturb the sediment in the bed of the stream, and you want to be also careful to sample upstream of your feet so that you minimize the chances of cross-contaminating your sample. And as you triple rinse that bottle, you empty the rinsate downstream of you. Within the channel itself, he's going to plunge the bottle, turn it upright, let the air out before removing the bottle from the water column, leaving a slight amount of headspace and capping the bottle, making sure not to cross-thread the cap. And place the sample in the cooler alongside the blue ice pack. Bjorn will demonstrate sampling total nitrogen. This is a plastic bottle with a plastic blue threaded cap. This bottle also requires rinsing 3 times before sampling. Being careful not to disturb the channel bed where he's sampling, and being careful to discard the rinsate downstream of where he's standing. Bjorn is triple rinsing the bottle, plunging into the water column, tipping to let the air out before removing from the water column. Here we want to fill to the line marked on the outside of the vial. And it's important with these nitrogen bottles to not cross-thread the cap. And you can do so by lefty-loosey, turning counterclockwise at first and then clockwise to seat the threads properly. At each sample station, it's also important to get a water temperature using the thermometer supplied in the sample kit, and ideally a shaded portion of the channel. Leave the thermometer submerged for at least 30 seconds to a minute to allow the alcohol in the thermometer to equilibrate with the temperature of the water. The other samplers on your team can record the temperature information on the field data sheet. They've also been recording the collection of each of the sample parameters, total phosphorus, E. coli, turbidity, etc. One line is maintained for each sample site and for each sample type, whether you're doing a regular sample, a field duplicate, or a field blank. It's important to make observations of the environment while you're there sampling. So for example, if site conditions have changed or are different than normal, that's important to note in the comments. If land uses have been altered in the vicinity, such as manure applied to fields nearby the stream, that would be an important condition to note, or any discoloration of the water or abnormality. Also important to note the water color. There are options given on the field data sheet to describe the color, ranging from muddy to tea-colored. Use your best judgment to assign a color classification for the water at the time of sampling. And note the amount of algal growth along the stream bed and estimate it from 0 to 25%, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, and so on. Again, use your best judgment. It's also important to gather an air temperature in the shade at the site so that this can be compared to the water temperature. And most importantly is to note the sample time on your field data sheet as well as on each individual bottle label.
Addison County River Watch Collaborative is grateful for logistical and financial support from the Addison County Regional Planning Commission and analytical support from the Vermont Agricultural and Environmental Laboratory. This video was funded with support from the Lake Champlain Basin Program.